What are both of those things? The first time I heard about generational trauma, I thought it was like woo-woo, fluffy, hopeful, like wishful like a nice way to blame your ancestors for the way that you are. When I first heard about this concept that you could be passed down trauma from your parents or your grandparents, it just seemed like it couldn't possibly be true.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a relatively new area of research. So I'm actually going to separate this into a few things. So generational trauma, and you can look this up, is related to specific times of acts that were placed onto particular marginalized groups. So like first Americans, slavery. There's in Asia, there are some particular groups that were treated in a certain way. And that is, so the impact of generational trauma is when something happened to one generation, there's a psychological spillover, and it can be something to do with you always feel isolated, or you always feel lonely, or you always feel at the margin, or you always feel left out. That's because a whole generation were treated in a certain way, and that has an impact. Intergenerational epigenetic trauma is about how some external event actually changes the expression of your genes. So we have a genotype and a phenotype. The genotype is your DNA. It doesn't change, but the phenotype is which bits get switched on and switched off. The most famous examples of this are the Holocaust and the Dutch famine, but there are other examples. And we are sufficient generations away from that now to have seen like 3+ generations changes in the stress responses. And it's not always bad. So sometimes people are more resilient because their grandparents or great-grandparents went through something terrible. Sometimes people are more anxious. And it's hard to know necessarily why things might go one way or another. I always say to people that you aren't born with the genes that your parents had when they were born. You're born with the expression of the genes that your parents had around the time of conception. And then, of course, your mother's stress levels through the trimesters of pregnancy. And this isn't meant to blame anyone for what happened in the past or how stressed they feel when they're pregnant. It's meant to raise awareness of the fact that if you have something in your family's history, or you did have a particularly stressful pregnancy, you can use neuroplasticity to improve the chances of your baby expressing genes that will be more helpful for them in life than if you didn't know about all of this stuff.